Welcome to another episode of Low Tech Garage, and today we are back in the shop, and boy do we have a fun project in store for everyone today. So, some of you may remember the Range Rover behind me here. I've actually only done one video on this truck, and that was showing you guys how to install the OEM tow bar to it. And then unfortunately, we had a little bit of an incident. That incident is lurking right down here. This is the thermostat housing. I'm sure some folks with the 5-liter are very familiar with this. And this, I'll put a little arrow to point at it, where the hose clamp is basically part of the cooling system that connects onto the thermostat housing. And unfortunately, that little hose decided to come off the thermostat housing while we were driving the car. Not much we could do. It basically dumped the entire cooling system in a matter of seconds when that happened. And unfortunately, by the time the car was able to get to the side of the road, it looks like we have just slightly damaged a head gasket. And certainly head gasket issues are not uncommon with the Land Rovers. They are just extremely sensitive to heat. So if you find yourself in a situation like this, it's not uncommon that you have to do a head gasket job. And unfortunately, that's what we're getting stuck into today. My plan is once the heads are off, because of the mileage, I'm gonna go get them checked, make sure they're straight, nothing got warped when it overheated. But I just wanna be 100% sure doing this much work that everything going back on is good, because I certainly don't wanna redo it. Oh, and if you are new to the channel, now's a great time to say, please consider subscribing, because I find myself in situations like this all the time, and I love sharing them with you guys, and that subscribe really helps me out. Also, drop me a comment, let me know your thoughts on what I'm doing here. Certainly welcome your input. I know on the recent video, you guys helped me out a bunch with the Jaguar. I thought I had an oil leak from a certain area, and you guys pointed me to the exact right direction to actually fix it. Hit that subscribe button, notification bell, and let's get into the Range Rover. So we start by taking off the air box, just making a little space under the hood, getting the oil filter housing out of the way so we can start the oil draining procedure and get the front grille off. Then it's on to the cowl. The wipers were a little tricky to get off, but we were successful after a little bit of wrestling, and this allowed us to lift the cowl cover out of the way, and then the upper air box for the AC, along with all the little side plastics. Here we're moving the slam panel out of the way just to gain access to the front of the car, then the bumper cover itself, followed by the crash bar, then more plastics, really trying to get access to the cooling pack here, as it's one complete assembly, but it is pretty buried in. We got the headlights out of the way. More on that in the future. And here comes the other one as well. And now we're down to some remaining trim that were really on the chassis legs and just giving us that final access that we've been looking for. And with a little bit of a wrestle, here comes the cooling pack after quite a lot of work. But now, getting it down to the ground, we finally have the access to the front of the truck that we've really been wanting this whole time. Okay, well that was a bit of a frantic few hours of disassembly, but made some awesome progress. And really what I've done here is tear the truck down so I can have proper access to the motor, and it should make things a lot easier when it comes to getting these cylinder heads off. And I'll say, this isn't for the faint of heart, but here she is. So we have basically the entire front of the truck off. It came apart pretty easy, honestly, considering how stripped down this is, but now we have complete access to the front of the motor. And honestly, mainly the reason for doing so was down here, the cooling pack really did not want to come out without the removal of the crash bar, and it just made sense. That being said, the engine's still pretty complete. The plan now, I took some time to put all the bits and pieces I shredded off the car away, so they're stored for the time being. So kind of step 2 now is going to be start digging into the motor itself. I'm gonna work on getting the plugs out, the fuel injectors, get this upper intake manifold off, so we can basically get down to see the cams. And we wanna make sure that we have the motor locked in top dead center before we start tearing the cylinder heads off. I'm working here on the high pressure fuel system, getting the crossover pipe off the intake manifold. You can see I have some rags here to get any residual fuel, then shop vacuuming out the intake manifold to get any dust off before removing a bunch of bolts holding the intake manifold down to the cylinder heads. But from here, I have to wrestle it a little bit. There's a few connectors at the back, but with that, the intake comes off. Okay, well, we are back. Intake manifold is off. And admittedly, this came off a little bit easier than anticipated. The other thing I wanted to show you is I believe I found a little bit of an indication on the cylinders that are having the failure. Kind of normal for a direct injection engine. But as we move down, you see how white these ones are? And then as we come down further, look at these guys. And then over here, back to what I would consider normal, 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 and normal. So it looks like we just have a failure on one bank, but nonetheless, we're this deep. We're going to fix everything. So in a way, I'm glad that I've at least found a culprit, because honestly, when I drained the oil, it was clean. When I drained the coolant, it was clean. But having the intake off, it's interesting seeing the valves. That's certainly a smoking gun, like I said. So with that, we need to get on and get these fuel injectors out. That is a bit of a process on these. You actually have to use a slide hammer. I can work on getting the valve covers off, and we are one step closer to getting these cylinder heads off the truck. All right, well, more progress has been made. Got the intake manifold off, a lot of the accessories on the front of the car off, and then we do actually have a valve cover off. So you can see the cams and the timing gear. I have the valve cover undone, but the high pressure fuel line is kind of blocking it. So there's a few more things I'm gonna have to take off, and hopefully we can get this valve cover off. Another thing I plan on doing is once I lock the crank and the fuel pump, I'm actually gonna put the cam tools on top just to make sure more than anything that they are locking in while all the timing set is where it's supposed to be, really with the goal of ensuring that everything is locked exactly where it needs to be before we tear this down. Okay, well, I am back from out of town and it's time to get back on the Range Rover. So let me show you the progress that I have made in the teardown. There is a lot that has to come off the car to do this, but I will say overall it has been pretty straightforward. And from that, after I show you where I'm at, I'll show you kind of the next step of what I'm trying to accomplish before I get these heads off. So we find ourselves in what's left of the engine bay. And as you can see, I've got the valve covers off, intake manifold, fuel injectors, all of that out. And we are kind of at a stripped long block right now, gearing up to expose the timing set. And then we will have to obviously get all the chains off before we can get the cylinder heads off. So here we have them. This guy is the one that's actually going to be basically pinning the crank. We have to take a sensor out back by the transmission and replace it with this. It will only seat in when this piece kind of fits in the gap in there. So I will show you
under the car when we're installing this, exactly how to get this seated and attached to lock the crank. And then the other component is this, and this is basically making sure that the vacuum pump stays in time, and also critical with what we're doing as well. And we have right here the locking tool, which is conveniently the same cam shape, and it can basically slot in. Now right now it won't go all the way in, and the reason is, if you look here, we have this piece and how it sits on the cam, and when we look inside the vacuum pump here, it is not in the right spot. So this is all part of kind of pinning the crank and making sure all the timing is in right. And this is going to require me to turn the motor over, but also I need to get under the car and show you the other place that we need to pin this, and probably start there. You can see the sensor just up here. It's really on the back of the block, just before the transmission tunnel. It looks like we have a T30 that needs to be removed so we can pull the sensor out. And now we have the crank sensor out of the way. The other timing tool has been slotted in. So there it is. Take you around the front so you can see the vacuum pump tool as well. The vacuum pump locking tool is fully seated in.
So for peace of mind, I'm actually going to get the cam alignment tools and just set them on the camshafts right now. This is really for me to know 100% sure that I have everything in time, exactly where it needs to be.
And these are the tools at the back. So they basically lock into slots in the back of the camshafts. You kind of nip them down, and that lets you know that they are in time. Obviously, like I said, we already know the crank's in the right place, the vacuum pump's in the right place. And then as we come across the back here, I have the same in the back. And again, this is really just to make sure everything's where it's supposed to be as we start taking things apart. And the next thing I'm going to be removing here are the cam phasers and also the sensors here on the cam. You can see I've already labeled them, and this is going to serve as a reminder for me on reassembly.
What's important to note here is you see I'm using a screwdriver just to work these out, as the O-rings were pretty well stuck in there, and there was no pulling that was going to get these out of the upper timing covers. But as you can see, I was successful with removing them. Then from here, just undoing the upper timing cover. This one was on there a little bit more than the other, but with a little bit of work, I was successful in getting it off as well.
Timing covers are off. The cam sensors and part of the kind of phaser actuators have been removed. They were a little tricky to get out. The O-rings sealed very well, so you'll probably see where I was kind of having to tease them out to get them off. But nonetheless, these are off. Same on this side. What I found interesting is there's very clear signs here that someone's been in here, definitely with RTV. But then on this side, it is different. So a little unsure of what has or has not been done. The other thing I found is the chain on this side has a fair bit of play. Nothing super crazy, but there is play. And then this one is notably tighter.
But there's no more avoiding it. Lurking down there is the crank. We have to get that crank pulley off. Bolt is left-hand thread, at least on the early 5 liters, but we have the crank pulley off. We have the lower timing cover off.
And here we go. So as we come down here, this is what we have unearthed. And really, now we need to work on getting this whole timing set out, and especially off the top here, get the cams out so the heads can come off. Admittedly, it's a little bit of a mess over here, but I wanted to show you the tools I had to use to get the crank bolt out. So this guy, I think you guys all have seen, I had a piece of wood that this was wedged up against. I also see people put a jack stand under this as well, but we wedged a piece of wood under it, and then we were able to use the giant socket, which is right here, to undo the crank bolt, which, like I said, is left-hand thread. And then this is part of the pulley installer and remover tool. And then right here, I still have it all together because this is how I'm going to put it back on as well. So all of this just to get the crank pulley off, basically. This is the slide hammer you saw earlier in the video for getting the injectors out as well. I'm working on getting the tensioner itself out here. So a couple bolts on each of those, and then with a little jiggling, they come out. Then I move on to the timing chain guides. One came out pretty easily. The other one I had to wait till removing a few more things. Then I'm on to the cam phasers, so 3 bolts on each one of these. And by getting these off on each side, it gives me less tension on the remaining chain, and that means I can get the phaser off as well as the guide that was still there. And then we're on to the lower guides, so just a few more bolts on each side for those, and they're out. Moving on to the cams, taking all the different cam caps off. Now I'm taking my time here to walk it over and label everything I'm removing to ensure that everything goes back in the order that it came out of the truck. So all the cam journals remain in the same place. Obviously the cam shafts remain in the same place. And it's all in order and ready to be put back on when I get the heads back.
Update time. So passenger side head, we have the timing set out. Well, we have that out on the whole motor. We have the cams out, as well as the lifters if we come down here. And here on the shelf, I have everything laid out exactly how it came out of the head. So when we put everything back, all the bearing caps go in the order and direction they were in, and same with all the lifters as well. So we have our intake on this side, exhaust on this side. And on the driver's side, as you can see, I am yet to start the removal process. So I need to set up another piece of cardboard where I can outline where everything goes, and then I will repeat the same process over. And once this step's complete, this really leaves me with the cylinder head bolts that have to come out, and I have to undo the exhaust manifolds. So I have to undo the collectors where they meet to the manifold, and then I'm gonna plan at least to take the head off with the manifold still attached. Oh, and for my Land Rover experts, I had purchased this truck and was under the impression that the timing gear had been done, predominantly because this truck was actually built in 2010, and with about 130,000 miles when purchased, it seemed very unlikely that it was running as well as it was without the timing gear already being done. However, when I took this off, we see the OEM looking sealant here, and what looks to be the same color on the lower timing case. And then when we come to this head, we have black RTV, which is certainly at least different. So based on that, my Range Rover, Jag, Land Rover experts, what do you say? Do you think this was still running its factory timing gear, or do you think someone's replaced this? And the reason I'm unsure is, look at these timing chain guides. They look practically brand new. And when we get the metal ones and flip them over, that's really what we're seeing on the back where the tensioner rides on it. Let me show you the motor. It is pretty much as stripped down as it's gonna be, apart from obviously pulling these heads off. I'm waiting on one specialty tool to come in so I can undo these head bolts. And here she is. So obvious things now. Oil cooler in the center down here is gone.
And then as we come over here, we have the driver's side head all stripped down as well. And here's the finished product of the cams, the bearing caps, and all the lifters. As you can see, I labeled it PS for passenger side, and then it's kind of how the engine is laid out when I'm facing it. So we've got the intake cams here, exhaust cams on the side, bearing caps, lifters for each one as we go across. My special poly drive tool has arrived. This is what's needed to get those cylinder head bolts off. Let me get this a little closer. And you can see it's like a slightly different variant of a Torx. And with the tool, I can get stuck in on the cylinder head. There are actually 10 head bolts per side. And so being torqued to yield, they take quite a lot of effort to undo. You'll see I'm using a combination of a breaker bar to crack them free, then my electric ratchet to undo them the rest of the way, and then finally actually a magnet just to pull the bolt out between the cam journal carefully. Once I've got that, you can start lifting the cylinder head up. They are on some dowels, so they take a little bit of wriggling to get off, but overall not too challenging. And before you know it, the cylinder head's coming off. Thought I'd give you guys a status update. We have the passenger side head off. Now, I believe this side has been the culprit to the blown head gasket. Because of the deck design, as soon as I popped the heads off, obviously coolant kind of came out, the residual from the block. This will give you guys a little bit better of an idea. There was like a little puddle of coolant in here. Kind of soaked up the coolant in all the other pistons already, but this one had some scale, which is an indication that really coolant was weeping in there, and definitely our smoking gun for the failure of the head gasket right here. And here she is, a very Spartan looking engine bay. And honestly, everything on the driver's side seems to be okay. I think the head gasket failure was just limited to the passenger side. And there are a couple of jobs that I have been planning on doing, but access was a little bit of a challenge. But now with the engine bay stripped down this much, I have great access, so I'm gonna knock those out while we wait for the heads to come back. But let me show you what I'm planning on doing as well. And yeah, we'll pick that up in another video, but thought I'd show you, at least from an access standpoint, how much easier it is now. And that's gonna be the motor mount here, which isn't too bad. And then tucked back here, that's the other one right here, which would have been a real pain to get to. And now it's pretty easy compared to how it would have been with a full engine bay and complete motor. The other thing I noticed lurking down there, that's your front sway bar bushing. Very easy to access. So I think I'm just gonna swap those out because I can get to them real easy, just while you're in there type task based on my age and mileage of the truck. When we come over to the floor, you'll see we have a pair of cylinder heads. And right now they still have the exhaust manifolds attached, which means I have a little bit more work to do before they are stripped down enough to go to the machine shop to be inspected. So I'm gonna get on with that. We're gonna get the manifolds off, and I think we might just be at a point where we can say job done for disassembly. Here we have it, the cylinder heads finally stripped down and ready to go to the machine shop. So that's where we're gonna wrap it for today. As you probably saw, this took me multiple days to tear down the truck. There are just a lot of bits and pieces, and you have to label everything, make sure that you have what you need when you're gonna put everything back together. But we are officially stripped down. The heads are free. The fuel injectors are free. I'm gonna be taking those off to the shop to be looked at. I think I just said what the heads work's gonna be. The injectors, I'm gonna have them all flow tested, make sure they're working, have them cleaned, hopefully so they're good to go as well. And just a reminder for those feeling as adventurous as I was doing this, this is really what you're left with once you have everything stripped down. Certainly way more room under here, but a little intimidating nonetheless.
And if you are new to the channel and found your way here because of this Land Rover content, as you can see, there is plenty more in the pipeline. There's gonna be many videos putting this thing back together, and hopefully I can teach you how to do this job yourself and save thousands. Also, if you like the Jaguars, we got plenty of content coming on those here very soon, as well as the OBS Ford and the other cars in the shop. So hit that subscribe button, it really helps me out. I'm doing my best to get to 10,000 subscribers here, and we are getting closer every single day. Also, if you've done this job before, drop me a comment. Let me know any tips and tricks, because this is my first time doing it. I want to share the experience with you, but always welcome your input and feedback as well. But with that, I'll catch you all on the next episode.